Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good few times before. This brewery are known mainly for their New England Hazy IPAs, and I haven't actually had a beer that has not been a New England Hazy IPA from them before. So this is going to be the first one, and I have to say I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Nora, which is a little bit to the north of Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Apex Brewing, and this one is called the Keller Pils. So it comes in at 5.2% ABV. This one is a Keller lager beer, of course, and hopefully it turns out to be a nice beer. So this one was released as part of the Lokal Osmoskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for June of 2021. I was concerned that I wasn't going to be able to try this one because I was due to go over to the States, but unfortunately with the borders and things still being closed, I wasn't able to go there. Unfortunately, that meant that I could try this one. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Really curious to see what this one has in store for us, and always nice to review something new from Apex Brewing Company, of course, as well. So yeah, let's see how we go. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Apex Brewing Company before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Apex Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Apex Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Nora, to the north of Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm, and this brewery was founded back in 2017 by Daniel Gatchitz and Niklas Lundgren. So both of these guys are musicians, and it's quite a common thing in Sweden for musicians to get involved in brewing craft beer. But Niklas played in the band 59 Times the Pain, while Daniel played in The Voice of a Generation. So they are responsible for the brewing operations, but there are a few others involved in the company as well. So this is Leif Karlsson, Ola Eriksson, and Roger Hjelm. But they started off with a small 500-litre brew kit and 6 fermentation vessels, and they were just selling their beer in the local area before putting it into Systembolaget. The first beer that I tried from these guys was the Single Hop, if I remember rightly, which was, I think, just a Citra in New England. Hazy IPA, but it was really good, and you can still get that actually through Systembolaget if memory serves me correctly. But in 2018 they brewed around 35,000 litres of beer throughout the year, and they produced about 25 different varieties, all of which were New England Hazy IPAs, as I mentioned. But over the course of 2019 they brewed around 120,000 litres, and they had plans to expand that throughout 2020, and I'm guessing they will be expanding again in 2021. In recent years, they've been focusing on exporting their beer, of course, and I know that you can get these beers through certain web shops and things over in England, and I think up in Scotland as well, and I think there's a few other countries in Europe that they're exporting to as well, although I couldn't tell you exactly what ones. But as of June 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 80 different beers. Like I said, the overwhelming majority of them are New England Hazy IPAs, and this is the first one that they've released through Systembolaget in Sweden that is not a hazy New England IPA. I'm hoping that we'll get maybe a black IPA from them and a West Coast IPA at some point. I think that would be really cool. But you know, it is nice just to see them have a go at a lager beer. There has been quite a few of the different breweries around the country having a go at lagers, which is great to see, because I think the lager beers have been underappreciated for quite a long time. Everyone's been focusing on the IPAs, and in particular the New England Haze Craze IPAs. So I do hope we start to see a few more different styles from Apex Brewing. It's going to be really cool to see what these guys can do when they turn their attention to those a little bit. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Apex Brewing Company for the moment. I've had many nice New England IPAs from this brewery over the last couple of years. I couldn't tell you exactly which one is my favourite, because they're all, you know, if you have the same style from a brewery all the time, it's quite difficult to sort of distinguish in your long-term memory between them, but they do some very, very good beers within this style bracket. So if you're interested in New England hazies, then Apex Brewing Company is one of the Swedish ones that you definitely need to check out. But yeah, that's it for the history section. If you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, let's get on and have a look at this beer itself then. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is a little bit different compared to what we're normally expecting from Apex Brewing. It's got a lovely kind of silver shiny artwork on it, so my camera is going to hate this. Of course, the camera hates shiny artworks, but I think we'll leave the condensation on it because that kind of tones down the glare and stuff like that. But yeah, you can see there's a gargoyle on it this time. It reminds me a little bit of Stone Brewing, actually, the gargoyle that they've got on this one. But there you can see it, Keller Pales. The Apex Brewing Company symbol on the side there, which is great. The little viewfinder screen on the camera's fighting back on this, but as you can see, you still get that music and beer thing from this. I think I paid 30 Swedish kronor for this, if memory serves me correctly. I couldn't tell you though, but I think 30 or 35. I think 30 seems sounds more familiar though. But this beer, so if it's 30 kroner, that means it's roughly about €3 for the can, a little bit over £2.50 sterling, and then I guess somewhere in the region of $3.50, $3.75 American. But yeah, very nicely presented. 440 millilitres, which is a good measurement for a lager. I always complain when people put them in 330s. I don't like that. But yeah, this should be very nice. So this one is hopped with Magnum, Pearl, Hersbrucker and Mittelfru hops with a malt base of Pilsner and Chit malt, and it also uses the WLP 830 German lager yeast. So Chit, if I remember rightly, is a really old type of malt actually, or I think it also might be derived from wheat, if I remember rightly. But yeah, when it comes to lager beers, of course, the definition of a lager beer is that it's cold temperature fermentation, usually between 8 to 12 degrees Celsius, bottom fermenting yeast. In other words, ales of course are about 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, if I remember rightly, and that's called top fermenting yeast. The Keller lagers, these originate in Franconia, which is a region in the north of Bavaria in Germany. This region has the highest density of breweries per head of population anywhere in the world, and you also get the Zwickel as well actually. And so the Keller and the Zwickel, these are both beers that are kind of fermented in the cellar, if you like. They're a little bit more yeasty than other German lagers, and they are pretty nice actually. There are a few subtle differences between the Keller and the Zwickel. I think the Zwickel is a little bit weaker than the Keller in terms of ABV, and I think the Keller also is a little bit more kind of hoppy, if I remember rightly as well. So yeah, this one should be really interesting. But yeah, these beers come from the sort of Franconia region in the north of Bavaria in southern Germany. So quite an interesting one to try actually, as their first lager beer rather than a straight up, Helles or something like this. But yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. 440 milliliter can, this one. It should be very nice, and it's all German hops in this, of course, as well. Magnum is, you get American Magnum as well, but Magnum is about 6 or 7% alpha acid. Pearl is, I think, about 5 or 6% alpha acid. Hersbrucker and Mittelfru are the kind of more common types of hop acid. They're lower alpha acid, around 4.5% roughly, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, this should be very nice. I probably could have got my tankard out for this one, but it's a 440, not a half litre. So I was just like, yeah, just stick with the tulip for this one. But yeah, this should be really nice. As you can see, this beer has poured a lovely kind of pale, sort of almost straw yellow colour, which is quite interesting. As you would expect from a Keller lager, which as I say is a more yeasty forward lager, they don't filter these ones. Keller, of course, is German for cellar, like Scheller, Schelleren in Swedish, of course. But yeah, you can see this beer's poured with a lovely, I think it was, when it poured, I think it's gone down a little bit, I think it was a finger of a frothy, I would say, perfect white head. That is going to fade away a little bit over the next little while, of course. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass on this one, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there, but I mean, overall, it looks really nice. But a lovely, kind of light, hazy haziness to this one, and this is what you would expect from a Keller lager. Of course, it looks absolutely great. So the thing that I'm going to be looking for in this beer, of course, will be authenticity. When I try German beers, or German style beers I should say, what I want from them is to be close to the ones that you would actually find in Germany. So that's how we're going to rate this one. Of course, we need to think about the Czech Republic as well, because the Czech Svetli's, the Czech Svetli lagers are kind of similar to the German Keller lagers. Actually, they're not miles away from each other. So yeah, we'll think about that a little bit in this one too. But yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this beer then and see how we go. Certainly looks the part of a Keller lager, as we've said. So yeah, let's go for it. That does smell really nice, actually. The thing that's interesting about this as well is WLP. WLP is, they're a kind of more modern sort of craft beer company, as if you like. I guess we could say that, you know, WLP, White Labs Projects. These guys, as I say, modern, kind of more modern company. Although I'm not too familiar with all the different yeasts that they produce right enough. But yeah, a lot of the New England hazy breweries, of course, use these WLP yeasts, but they probably supply a bunch of breweries in Germany anyway, come to think of it. I'm not sure exactly what country they're from originally, but the authenticity of this beer, just from the first whiff of it, is very similar to what you're going to find in the likes of Bamberg and other places in Franconia. This is a very authentic smelling beer, this one. So thumbs up to them all straight away. So what you get out of this beer, you get a lovely soft breadiness to this one. You can feel that soft, smooth, white bready character coming out of it, and it's as I've explained to you in other reviews that I've done, particularly of German lagers, these beers are like so nostalgic for me. I do miss the German bakeries when I was living in Heidelberg down in Germany. My whole love of craft beer, of course, began with the Bamberg Rauch beers, which is a really unusual way into beer for a lot of people. But yeah, this one, this beer is absolutely is lovely in terms of its aroma. So yeah, soft, white bready base to this one. You can smell that it's a more yeasty bread, if that makes sense, rather than being a straight up, you know, kind of crisp bready character like you might get from, say, a Pilsner or something like that. There's a wee bit of a how would you say, there's a little bit of a kind of bread crusty element out of this one, like a fresh bread crusty quality, and you do get a little touch of sweetness out of this one for sure. And that'll be the Pilsner malt that's giving you that. You can smell a little bit of the crispness from the Pilsner malt in this one, which is quite interesting. As I've explained to you before, Pilsner malt can be really annoying to try and describe, because it's more Pilsner malt is more about the kind of vibe that it gives you from the beer. It gives you this really crisp, kind of dry sort of character, but it'll also give you a little bit of biscuity quality quite often as well. So there's a lovely little sweet, there's a lovely little kind of sweet caramelly note to this one, a wee bit of a sweet kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive sort of biscuity note right in the middle of your palate there, and you can also smell the slightly more grainy aspects of the of this beer as well, which is great. But it comes across really, really nicely actually. The authenticity of this beer is is great. The malty, yeasty side of this beer is spot on actually in terms of this style. So it's ticking the boxes for me so far, but the hoppy side of things I think is exactly what we should expect as well. You get, for me, the German hops, when it comes to the noble type hops, Slovenian hops tend to be kind of smooth, if you like, whereas the Czech ones are a little bit more spicy, and the German ones are very bright. But one of the distinguishing features for me for the German ones is that you get a smooth earthiness. You can smell that in the back of the nose with this, but you get a lovely bright floral aromaticity. Not spicy, as I say, it still maintains an element of smoothness, but it is quite bright, and you've got a good little bit of grassiness coming out of the beer as well. But that smells lovely. On the hoppy, on the fruity side of things, sorry, the fruits come from the hops, of course, but on the fruity side of things, this beer is what you'd expect. You've got a little bit of a kind of, there's a wee touch of like a kind of apricot note out of this one, maybe teeny hints of like a slight gooseberry, something like this. I don't know if pear's right. I don't think pear is too right for this one. This one smells as if it's got just a wee tiny hint of a like a slightly spicy apple or something like that. But I don't really get pear out of this one. But quite often in these sort of lagery beers, you'll get pear. But yeah, little, as I say, a very light apricot, a little bit of a kind of gooseberry note to it, and then a wee bit of a, as I say, a little bit of an appley note. And of course, you've got these sort of grassy, it's like lemony grassy type esters coming out of the beer as well. But in terms of authenticity, it's got everything that you would want. So let's, stick the rest of this in the glass and let's go for it. But I'm going to say, aroma wise, thumbs up to Apex Brewing for this one. They've got the authenticity thing down on the aroma. So yeah, let's go for it then and see what we get out of this beer. So this one is the Keller Pils, the very first non-IPA beer that I've had from Apex Brewing Company, who are based in Nora, a little bit to the north of Örebro here in Sweden. Really excited for this one actually, and congratulations to Sweden on their win against Slovakia, and I'm hoping that we maybe we can get maybe Scotland can get a good result against England later. Let's go for it and keep our fingers crossed. As long as we play well, I don't care, but let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn solid actually. Now, what I'll say is the aroma, as we say with this one, the aroma is very authentic. The flavour profile on this one is very authentic. The only kind of thing that's different about it, it has that Nordic cleanliness to it, and you still get a little hint of the kind of, you still get a wee bit of you get a little bit of that almost trademark, that very slight farmhousey type note that you can sometimes get from Apex Brewing. There's a little tiny hint of that in this one, which is nice. But that's, you want things like this. You want breweries to have their own kind of mark on styles like this. But this one ticks the boxes. It really, they have gone for it in terms of the authenticity with this style for sure. As I say, the main thing that just distinguishes it slightly is the kind of cleanliness you get out of this one. And I've said this about the lagers from the likes of Hyllie Brewery, and I think they're probably the best lager brewery in Sweden at the moment, from the craft side of things. But their beers are the same. They're very, very spot on in terms of the flavour, but you just get this bit of Nordic cleanliness to them, and I really appreciate that about these beers. So yeah, this is good. I'm going to say it straight away, thumbs up to Apex. It almost makes me a little bit disappointed that they've not tried something like this sooner, of course, but they made their name in the New England Hazy IPAs. They wanted to grow themselves a little bit before they tried something different. You can respect that. But yeah, 5.2% Keller lager beer, this one. It's solid, absolutely solid. It's got the authenticity I would want from this style. So try this for yourself, see what you think. Yeah, where do we start with this one then? Straight away across the middle of your palate, you can feel a nice sort of smooth white bready character, as you would expect. You can feel that it is a kind of yeasty white bread in there. Obviously, it's not quite as crisp, for example, as you're going to get from a Pilsner or even a Helles lager, but it certainly comes across really nicely. So yeah, soft white bready character right across the middle of your palate. If you go to either end of that middle, third of your palate, you'll get a nice kind of slightly bread crusty type quality coming off of this one. But yeah, it's interesting, there's almost a tiny little hint of a banana apricot-y thing in the middle of the palate there, which is nice, but that's initially when you take it in. Once the flavour kind of matures a little bit, once that's kind of an impact flavour, if you like, then the beer smoothens out and you just get more and more of that nice kind of soft yeasty breadiness there. So if you go on to that back half of that middle third of your palate, you can feel the sort of dry crispness of the Pilsner malt coming out a little bit. So the Pilsner malt is most definitely showing its head here. And if you go into the kind of middle of your palate, sitting on top of that, there's almost like a little circle, if you like. So in the dead centre of in the middle third of your palate, you get you do get a wee bit of a kind of concentrated sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, and as you move further out towards the edge of the palate, it becomes a little bit more dissipated, but you get that slightly more grainy, biscuity, cookie type thing coming out of the beer. I never know whether, when I'm reviewing the Swedish beers, because it's going to be a Swedish audience mainly, I never know whether to use the British English or the American English with these, but yeah, kind of biscuity type quality out of this one. But I think, to be honest, I think that describes the flavour of this one quite nicely. I'd say that in the beginning, the impact flavours are a bit different from what I would maybe expect from a kind of Keller beer, but the aftertaste and the way this lingers, and the way that the kind of yeastiness and breadiness lingers into the aftertaste, that is exactly what you would expect from a Frankische Keller beer. Franconian Keller beer. So yeah, this really gets a thumbs up for me. There are, underneath that front half of the middle third of your palate, you get a very slight woodiness to it as well. And I would say that probably I don't know how common this yeast that they're using would be for how common it would be for German breweries to use this specific yeast, but it certainly comes across very similar, as I say, to what the ones I've had in Franconia when I've been down in Bamberg and things like that. The fruit, I would say, though it does come across as slightly more fruity on the impact, but yeah, the Keller beer, it's a style that I like, but you don't find too many examples of it. Although, as I say, more and more breweries are turning their attention to lager beers these days, which I like, so I think it's something that we are going to see more of. But yeah, middle third of your palate, which is critical in this beer style in my opinion. Again, it comes across as very authentic. Let's look at the other parts of the palate then. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build-up in this one. You can feel a little bit of the bread crust, you can feel a little bit of a grainy bread crust kind of sitting on top of that. Then the back third of your palate, again, you've got a nice little bit of a graininess underneath. You've got a slightly thicker bready quality in this one too, which I think is quite nice. And yeah, I think it really goes together quite well actually on from that side of things. But sitting on top of the back third of your palate, of course, this is where you get the yeasty element out of the beer, and this is one of the things that defines a Keller and a Zwickel beer. Actually, they are slightly more yeasty lagers because they're not filtered. So yeah, sitting on top of that, the breadiness in the back third of the palate on the base feels a little bit thicker, but you also get this nice airy kind of yeasty type quality sitting on top of it. So when you go from the back of your palate coming forward, you can feel that the flavour's taller, but it condenses down a wee bit. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it is quite condensed together and just nice and crisp in that sense. So I like how that comes across in this beer, absolutely. But yeah, I think it works. It works very, very well. So yeah, the malty and yeasty side of things in this comes across as really authentic. Like I say, slightly different impact flavours, and the beer overall feels a little bit cleaner almost than some of the German examples I've had, but it really does the trick. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of a smooth earthiness in there, which you'd expect. As you move further forward, there's a tiny little bit of a herbal quality, but as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it smoothens out and you get a little bit of a floral bright character coming out of this one. But round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter, and it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, which I think is interesting, absolutely. But yeah, the hoppy character is distinctly German. I mean, you've got Magnum, Pearl, Hallertau Mittelfrüh and Hersbrucker in here as well. So yeah, German green side of things is good, but overall the beer, I think it leans a bit more towards the kind of grassy side of things. But yeah, the smoothness, the smooth earthiness is the distinct characteristic of the German hops for me, so I like that for sure. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the kind of fruitiness then. So border region between middle third and border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a lighter grassiness then. How do you say, the brain's not working, you get a bit of a thicker breadiness there. I'm saying that the grassiness gets a little bit, meaning that the grassiness gets a little bit lighter the further you go into the aftertaste, which is interesting. It's a wee bit brighter and zestier too, but yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again a little bit of a bready build up, a wee bit of a bread crust. Then the base of that front third of your palate is the kind of yeasty, soft, white bready element there. That's what you'd expect. On top of that, you get that nice, slightly oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. At the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a slightly more concentrated, citrusy kind of element, and it's almost a little bit lemony in a sense. But as you move further forward from that, you start to get a few apricot flavours in there. As you go into the front half of that front third of your tongue, there's a wee bit of a more oily kind of gooseberry sort of thing coming out of this one, and then it's got a wee bit of a how do you say, it's got a little bit of a more you know, it's got a little touch of a kind of a more apple-y sort of spicy sort of thing just sitting on top of that. But then right behind the front tip of the tongue, you've got a little bit of a you've got a wee bit of a kind of more grassy ester coming out of the beer, which I think is great. But yeah, the fruit, the flavour of this one comes across very, very nicely actually in terms of how, as far as flavours go, I think it does work. Very, very nice actually. So yeah, it's just very authentic, and this is what I look for in these kind of beers. So this one gets a big thumbs up from me. I hope that they keep this as a regular beer actually. I think they need to have something like this as a regular beer, because I don't think Apex really have a core range, if you like. I think there's one or two of their beers are usually left for like a year in Systembolaget, but to have something like this and, you know, one of their session IPAs or something, I think they need to. I think that's the next thing for Apex, is they they should keep doing the experimentations with these beers, but they should have maybe an IPA, a pale ale, and a lager beer or something like this that are core beers that they do all the time. But that's maybe something that will come later, of course, when they perfect some of the styles and stuff. But for a first attempt, or a first release of a lager beer, I think this is really damn solid, so have to give them credit for that. In terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off this review, it's a light-bodied beer. You know, you'd expect that from this style. Carbonation's got a degree of crispness to it. The beer overall is quite smooth. You'd expect that from this particular sub-style of lager, of course. And you've also got a bit of that kind of Nordic cleanliness, like I said, too. Middle third of your palate is quite smooth in this one. It's got a little touch of sweetness to it. And I think, you know, that works in its favour. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this beer is about 20-ish IBUs, somewhere between, yeah, probably, I think 20 is probably fair for this one, about 20 IBUs. But remember, this is my weakest point of beer reviewing, so pinch of salt required there. But yeah, smooth malt base, soft breadiness, little touch of biscuity sweetness, and the fruity side of the beer, it's you know, a little bit lighter and a little bit citrusy too. But yeah, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the flavour of this beer, but and you know, just think it over, because it's really nice. And I always like this when you try beers from breweries that you know, but it's styles that they haven't done before. I think this is always one of the most interesting types of review for me to do. But they've shown themselves to be very capable in this lager category, I think, with this beer. So I look forward to seeing a few more from these guys. Maybe a straight up Pils could be an interesting one for them to do next, or a kind of Munich Helles, a Dortmund a Helles, or, you know, a Czech Svetli would be interesting. A Vienna lager, something slightly more malty, would be good. But we've not really had a malty beer from these guys yet, so we'll see what Apex throw out over the next little while. I think it's going to be interesting for sure. But yeah, let's leave it there. This one was the Keller Pils 5.2% ABV from Apex Brewing Company in Nora, near Urbo. I thought they did a really good job of this, and I think we can leave it there. But thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Apex Brewing Company. This has been a really interesting one to try. Thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll catch you guys very, very soon. Slàinte, skull, cheers, and I hope you guys are enjoying the Euros.